Right, so taking that graphic, this is a sprite. Any sprite that we do in the same way. Okay, and you can look at the other stuff that's in there that I've left in the template that you can disable, or you will want to disable it. Alright, to see how we do this. So I've got my little crappy texture. Let me just show you it again. Shizbot, name my game. Okay, come back. We're going to display this on the title screen. Whew, that's small. Right, all your modes will have a similar setup. We have a subroutine that we call prepare whatever that section is. So if you're doing an instruction screen, you will have prepare instructions, and you'll have something like this where you're saying start this state equals and then the name of the subroutine to run. The reason we're doing it like that is because we want to make sure that everything else is finished before we start running extra subroutines, because you can get in a really unholy mess. There are different ways of doing this, game states and things, but I don't want to get into the complication of that with this template for you. It's just going to make it worse for you. Alright, we just want to keep it as simple. Alright, so that eventually will cause this subroutine to run. And this is the subroutine that sets up the title screen. So if we just look briefly at what's in here, I've got some debug information that I want to display. If I don't want that on, what I need to do is to say debug information none, and comment out the rest of the line. But you will, when you're doing things and things start going wrong, let's say your game starts slowing down for no reason. You've only got one sprite on screen and it's slowing down. You'll want to put the debug information on to see how many sprites the engine's drawing, and it'll tell you how many it's drawing. A common mistake is to keep recreating sprites over and over again on top of themselves, and the engine will do that up to 20,000. You'll notice it looking slightly blurred because the graphics guy's having to draw pixels and blend on top 20,000 times per frame, which is going to kill the graphics card. These aren't the best graphics cards in the world, remember, and mine hasn't even got a decent driver on it.
That's what happened on mine, wasn't it?
Yeah, you did that. Yeah, it was like, ooh, it's going slow. We looked at it and it was like, yeah, I'm managing 50,000 sprites or something, he said, within about 2 seconds. Yeah. So I'll leave that on for now, but that's how you can turn it off. And you can obviously turn that on and off wherever you need it when you're testing. The next bit sets up what we call a game state, which just records. This is just really an integer with a nice name, so it's a constant. We'll use that when we're detecting what keys we should be looking for. So the keys that we're checking when we're playing the game are going to be different from when we're navigating the menus and things. Alright, so it allows us to check, so we're in title mode, do this with the keys. The next line gets rid of anything that the engine was doing for us. So it gets rid of all the backgrounds, it gets rid of any audio that's playing, whether that's music or sound effects. It gets rid of any sprites that are being managed. It destroys all the timers and events that we've got. Okay, but that does all of them. If you've got some music playing and you want it to keep playing, you'll have to use different ones. I've set up a few basic ones. If you go to the definition of that, there's a few different in there. Clear all but sound, clear sounds, clear all but sprites if you don't want to destroy your sprites. But you can have a look at those at your leisure. The next two bits set the colour of the screen and the size of the world. So the screen is just a viewport on our world. Okay? If you're having a scrolling game, you'll want your world size to be bigger. And the scrolling is just achieved by saying move where the viewer's looking. Okay? And you can do that loads of ways. You can do it mechanically yourself. Or you can make, it's quite easy to set up the position of the viewport based on where the player is, which is how shoot 'em ups and everything works. Okay? It's how walking around the dungeon is going to work and things like that. Alright, but I've just said here, make it the same size as what the screen is, because this is a static page. Okay? And then I've just got the various setup for what I want. I'm just going to turn all of these off for this demonstration. Okay, so if I run my code now, all I should get is a grey background with some title text on it, which I'm going to get rid of. Okay. Game's title. That's from when we were doing that thing before, when we were chopping it and it was just showing something. Okay, so I don't want that, so I'm going to get rid of that. I've commented out rather than destroyed the lines because I might want to look at those in future. Your final bit of your code, you'll take out all the stuff that you don't want. Okay? Right, so I'm going to create a sprite to show that naff graphic. So I'm going to create a subroutine. Show title graphic. I'm going to call it. It doesn't exist. Visual Studio is awesome. It can create this for me. It doesn't know what code I want to put in it, but it'll create the structure for me. So I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to say generate method stub. It'll stop moaning because it now exists. I don't know where it's created it, but I've only got to do right click, go to definition, and there it is. Generates this though. That's to stop you thinking you've written that code, because the program will work now, but it'll force this error to come up to remind you you haven't written it yet, you lazy sod. Okay, so I'm just going to create my sprite definition now. So I'm going to get rid of that line. This is basic stuff. Every time you do a sprite, you'll do the same thing. We create a local variable to store the sprite. I always call it S. And the reason I do that is because I can then copy similar setup code for different sprites from each other. So if you think, oh, I've done that, I set up some code to do that. I wanted a trail effect. I want the same trail effect on a different sprite. I'll just nick the code. I don't want to have to re-edit anything. Okay, so I just say, right, create a sprite. Ask the engine manager to add this sprite.
Then put the name of the sprite in the brackets.
Nope. You can if you want, but this way, this adds, what it basically does, the engine creates the sprite for us and we store a reference to it, which is what the equals is for. Okay, so we've got to reference that sprite and we can now mess about with it. So the first task is to define the graphics for it. So I'll go s.frame_define, and it wants to know the texture I want to use. There's loads of ways of creating these, but I'm going to create a texture. So I know where I've stored it, TX title stuff. Okay, I'm using the picker so I don't make mistakes in spelling. Then it wants to know what part of that texture. If I leave it like that, it'll display the whole texture. So that 1000 by 1000 graphic, it'll show the whole thing on screen. I don't want that in this instance. I just want the top left hand corner of it. But it needs to know the rectangle. And this is where having two screens makes a big difference. So I'm going to define a rectangle by saying the keyword new. View. It's the Aussie way of coding, though. View. View. I can't do an Aussie accent, obviously. Anyone do an Aussie accent? Go on.
I can.
Go on.
I'm too nervous.
Go on. Do it. What phrase does Aussies normally say? Good day. Good day.
Quiet, maybe.
Yeah.
There we go. There you go, you're welcome.
Very good, Ben. Very good. Right. Yeah, of course it is. That's why I got you to say it. Tricked you. Right. So we've got to specify the rectangle. So we say new rectangle. And when we define a rectangle, we have to specify 4 values. The top left hand corner, the X and Y value, and the width and height of the rectangle. That's how you define a rectangle in this. Okay? Fireworks can give us this information easily. So if I go back to Fireworks now, and I say, right, well I want the values for this graphic. So I'm going to zoom this in a little bit. Oops, not that much. I can use the text rectangle, but there's a load of blank space there that I'm not interested in. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my own rectangle over this text. Yeah, I'll fix it in a sec. Right. That's not mega because I can't actually see the graphic. So I can't see whether I've left loads of space, and I can see that I've chopped the front off. So what I need to do is use the transparency box. I'm going to change the colour as well because I don't like the white. I'm going to use blue. But I'm going to alter the transparency of this rectangle so I can see the graphic underneath. Now I know if I change the background colour of the canvas as well, by getting that, I'll make it, oh, I don't know, yeah, no, that'll be texture is yellow, won't it? Make it grey. I can see a little bit better, so I'm messing about here. Right, that's covered up the shizbot. It needs to be 1 pixel wider. So in the width box, I'm going to say 169.
You missed a bit on.
And it can come down a bit as well. So this rectangle can drop down. So I'm just using the cursor keys for fine adjustment. Okay, I've now made it too high, so I'm going to make it 39. So I'm adjusting the numbers. Right, that down here in the bottom left hand corner are the numbers that I need. Okay, to define my rectangle for the game engine. So I have got X is 3, Y is 2. So I've got flicking back. But if you've got 2 screens up, this is easy. And my width was 169 and height 39. So I'm saying 169, 39. Okay, so that ends the rectangle. That ends the call to the define function. And that's it. Now, if I run that now, I will run that now. It will display that graphic, but I haven't set the position, so it uses 0, 0 as the position. So you can see it here. We're only seeing a quarter of it because the alignment for the sprite by default is centered around the X and Y position, and the X and Y position was 0, 0. So that's no good to me. So I need to set that. So I'm going to say the alignment. I'm going to set the alignment to top. So I'm saying that the Y position is the top of my graphic, so it lets me position it to the window better, and the X is going to be the centre. So I'm going to set the alignment to that, and then I'm just going to say X equals screen size dot centre dot X, so wherever the centre of the screen is, and Y equals 10. So that's going to be 10 pixels down from the top of the screen. So I'll run it again. And you'll have to play about with things to get like, there you go, she's bottom of the screen. Okay, with a nice grey background. I'm going to make it a black background because grey's horrible. I didn't say grey's through was horrible, although I could have done. I could have done. I don't know how many people would disagree. Right, so it's on screen. It's not very big. I've got 2 options. If I want it bigger, I want it to make more of a statement. I've got 2 options. I can change the original graphic, okay, in Fireworks, make it bigger, redefine the rectangle, or I can ask the game engine to scale it. Okay, so I'm going to just scale it first. So I'm going to say, right, s.scale both equals 2. So that's going to scale it by 2. So it should be twice as big. But the position will be the same, 10 pixels from the top. Okay, so I've still got that little 10 pixel gap and it's still in the centre. Okay, so the game engine is doing all these nasty calculations about what the actual size of the graphic is for you. Okay, not very interesting, not very interesting. We're going to make this the most amazing title text graphic ever seen. Okay, now what would be cool is if we could animate that so it rose out of the bottom and it stretched up or something. Okay, you can do whatever you want with these things. And I can do that by defining, yeah, I call this an energy bar because you can use this to make energy bars. Dead easy. So if you've got a nice graphic and you want to like make it disappear as someone's getting damaged, you can do it using this. So what we need is basically a load of frames of animation. Now we could manually say show the top pixel, show the next 2 pixels, show 3 pixels. And we could do that ourselves manually, but I've been kind to you and I've built something that does all that work for you. Okay, so I can just say s.frame.define energy bar, and there are, you can mess about with how these work. We have to specify the texture and the full graphic for it, so this information basically, and then how we want the energy bar to be created. So I'm just going to copy that code. Okay, and one thing you're going to come across is you're going to write code and it's going to get long. But because it's C#, we can just press enter and start on the next line down. So what I'm going to do for each of my parameters, I'm going to put them on the next line down. And then I can read it easier and it's less likely to make mistakes. So I've got my rectangle. The next bit that I had to put in was growth direction. As I named these, so growth direction. So I want to put energy bar direction, and then I have to pick from these. Horizontal, last frame empty, which will make something shrink. So it go from completely displaying to shrink. Horizontal, last full, which is what I want to do. I think horizontal. It might go that way. We'll find out in a sec. Okay.
So I can do both of them at the same time?
No. You'd have to create some other funny graphics to that. And then the last one, how many steps? So how many frames of animation? Now if I'm going vertically, I've actually got 39 pixels vertically, so I'm going to put 39 steps. Okay.
What if you have to do more steps than the actual pixels?
Well, it'd stutter a bit, so it wouldn't look very smooth. I'll show you that. We'll see what that does. I don't want that first frame of animation now, so I'm just going to comment that out. Right, so I'm going to run that and see what it does. I might have got the wrong one because I can never remember horizontal and vertical, whatever I set it to. That worked very well, didn't it? Interesting. Right, hang on. Let's put it in the centre of the screen, just in case it's off the screen. Get used to American spellings with all this as well, because centre ain't spelled like that, but American spell it like that. That worked well. Interesting. Right, I'm just going to put a bit of debugging information on for the sprite, because I want to know what's going on here. I'll put some animation debugging information on. Let's just see if I actually get that on screen. It's not animating. Oh, yeah, because I'm not animating. I haven't told you to animate, I forgot it doesn't automatically animate. Right, so, but that's why we have debug information. So I can see that I've got animation state 0, active frame is is frame 0, which is blank, because I want it to grow, so it's showing nothing. It's on the first frame. There are 39 frames. Okay, so I'm not animating it. So what I'm going to do is I've got to set the animation. Oh, God. So I'm going to say frame.animator, and I now need to give it how I want it to animate. So I'm going to do a frame rate. So how long do I want each frame to show for? So let's do 0.05, so 20th of a second. And when I get to the last frame, I want it to stop. Okay. So you'll see the debug information, you'll see it actually moving and changing. Oh, I did get horizontal and vertical the wrong way around.
Beautiful.
Right, but I want it to come the other way. I always get that wrong way around. So I don't want horizontal, I want vertical last full. That one. Run it again. Run it again. Oh dear. I'm just showing you that I'm human. I'm not perfect.
You have to like sound
Right.
effects.
Can I do sound effects? Of course you can. You can play sound effects, Richard. What you can have? Twinkle on the old piano keys. Right. It looks a bit odd. It's growing down, which I didn't want. I want it to grow up. That's because of the alignment. If I change the alignment to bottom, so that it's fixed at the bottom where the Y value is, it'll grow up this time. You watch. So alignment matters when we're doing graphics.
What if you would put in the centre of the alignment?
If I do that, what do you think it's going to do?
No.
It's going to like go like that. Won't look very good. Not for this graphic. So where it's growing from isn't fixed because it's growing that way rather than that way. Okay? So when you set your alignment, it depends on what you do. Right, I'm just going to change animation so it's on reverse. So what it does when it gets to the last frame, it's going to reverse the animation, and it just keep doing that forever. So you get like an amazing effect now.
Whoa.
But you can use this, but like Richard, you can use this when you're doing your point blanky type stuff. If you want a character to come up from behind a box or from outside of a door, that's all you've got to do. The animation's done for you if you just have a static graphic. Okay? So that's it, that's creating sprites. So for creating your title screen and putting stuff on the screen, that is all you've got to do. You'll never be able to get anything looking as good as that. That's the problem. Okay, you're limited skills. You haven't got the flair that I've got. Okay? You know, you can have that as an aspirational